Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CarlGreer.com. Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. How did being come into being? How can something arise from nothing? So rather than go into too much of the philosophy, because it's important to me that this time of satsang stays a time of us delving into our truth. That's what satsang means, in the association of, in the presence of truth. It's not so much a class, a lecture, as it is an experience. And so I'll take this, but we'll take it in the spirit of, what does it mean for us? And so first of all, it's important to realize that there never was nothing. We're not talking about something out of nothing. In fact, the spirituality, the spiritual tradition that we refer to as Hinduism, is actually called Sanatan Dharma, which literally means an eternal way of life, no beginning, no end, that which always existed. And so if there was an always existing Dharma, well, of course, there was an always existing divine. The divine didn't suddenly come into being. What it's more like is it's not something out of nothing, but it's many out of one. That's what happened. So it wasn't there was nothing and then suddenly there is something, but there was an undivided oneness. Call it God, call it the divine, call it the supreme reality, call it truth, call it love. Whatever word we use, it doesn't matter. And then here we are, feeling like these very separate, individual, multiple beings, being told that our journey, our path is to go back to God. And then, of course, the question arises, well, how did we come out of God to begin with? If it's all about going back, how did that one become many? And again, without getting lost in too much of the philosophy, the most beautiful and deeply personally applicable explanation for that I've ever heard, and the one that feels the most right in my own heart, my own experience, is, first of all, First of all, we never did become many. That this illusion of separation is just an illusion, and that we actually are still part of the one. It's just our ignorance that makes us think we are separate. This ignorance that identifies as the body rather than identifying as soul. The ignorance that identifies as form instead of content. And so that's one important piece, is the one never did become many. There is only one. We are all just like waves on an infinite ocean. But even as a waveform, we never stop being ocean. So we are all just momentary forms of an infinite reality. And you can have an experience of that if you go deeply into meditation. You can sometimes touch that awareness of just beingness, just isness, not is happiness, not is peacefulness, not is even enlightenmentness, but just isness. So that's one important piece, is the one never really did become the many. The many is that illusion. And the essential and highest and most beautiful truth is to realize that you never actually did become separate from God. But that even in this individual form, you are God, like a wave is still ocean. Whether it's a 30-foot tsunami or a 2-inch little ripple, either way, they're still ocean. In the same way, whether we are a tiny baby, a big adult, whatever we may be, whatever the size or shape or color of our physical bodies may be, we're actually still divine. That's the truth of who we are, the core of who we are. And then there's this other piece, which says, well, okay, so yes, we know that's true. And we also know that we have these individual experiences that aren't an illusion. This experience of being an individual heart, an individual human existence, with its own individual recipe of all sorts of the stuff that makes us human. And so then, why did that one become many? And as I was saying, the only explanation that I've ever heard that feels in my personal heart like, yeah, is to experience the coming back together. And so think about it. To becoming one is beautiful, is extraordinary. Think about how beautiful an embrace with a loved one is. Think about how beautiful simply loving is, regardless of whom or what you love, but just the act of loving. But in order to love, there requires an other. It's very, very difficult to simply go within and love the undivided, unformed, ununique, pure consciousness of who you are. That's a very difficult actual experience to have. You can have an experience of touching it, of experiencing it, but then how to love it. If you're going to love, there needs to be the one who loves, and then there's the one who you love, and then there's this act of loving. So there's kind of three parts. There's me, the lover. There's the other being, a human being, a tree, a river, an animal, a human being living or having passed on, either way, whatever it may be that I love, but the beloved. And then there's this experience of love between us. 3 pieces. And what I've heard is that the divine, in order to experience that act of love, that many becoming one, went from one into many. And the reason that this makes sense to me is if you think about your own relationships, and this tends to happen mostly in romantic relationships more than just friends or siblings or family members, but think about being in a relationship with someone in which it's nice, you love each other, things are going well, but maybe it starts to feel a little bit boring. What do? Unconsciously. Most of us don't wake up in the morning and say, I know I'm going to pick a fight. But unconsciously, a lot of us stir up drama in our relationships just for the experience of bringing that drama to a peak. You've got a fight. And then when you have a fight, what that fight is one, like the two of you had been one in this relationship, but that got boring. And so then one of you stirred something up so that one would become two. Here you are in a fight. And then what do you get when you fight? Well, eventually you get to make up, right? And the two become one again. And that act of making up, that act of again coming back together, is just the spark, the catalyst that a lot of times we think our relationships need. And so if you really go within and you're really honest and you look at relationships that you've had, chances are you'll be able to identify either you or the other one, or maybe together. Again, unconsciously, we don't wake up and decide we're going to do it, but it just happens that we create this conflict because making up feels so good. Making up in many ways feels better than just, yeah, everything's fine. There's something about the juiciness of making up after you've been in a fight that seems to carry more joy for a lot of us than just the continual, yeah, things are going fine. And so when I think about that, the idea that the divine also wanted to experience that coming back together, even though he, she, it, they, however we conceive of the divine, of course knew it's all one. It's never been anything but one. But just on the surface layer, that experience of coming back together is so beautiful. And that's why the one created the many with the loss of memory that we were part of the one, so that we, remember we are divine on the inside, so that we as divinity, as we remember we are divine, are coming back together. And that experience of coming back together being so beautiful. So what that means for us is, regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, ask yourself, how can I experience that joy, that bliss of coming back to the truth of who I am? Okay, maybe I've forgotten. Maybe I have forgotten for every moment of the 25 or 35 or 65 years of my life. No problem. Pujya Swamiji always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. Right now, can you give yourself that opportunity to experience coming back together, back to your heart, back to your truth, back to that place of love and expansion and perfection within the self? Can you come back to that? And that's what our spiritual practice is about.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. I suffer from a previous breakup. Right now, I'm dating a person who wants to marry me. However, I'm not sure if I love him. For me, love is very important. How to find peace in me, get rid of fear of making a wrong choice, and hear my inner voice clearly regarding my feelings for this man. So, love and fear are two of the most primal and primary driving forces in our lives. And very frequently, like in this question, we find them coming literally at a head with each other. So, she had a previous breakup, now in a relationship with a man who loves her, wants to marry her, but she doesn't know if she loves him, she's afraid of making the wrong decision. All very normal, very natural. Most of us, without possibly the marriage part, most of us have probably been in some variety of a similar situation at some point in our lives. What's important here is that we understand our motivations. Because making any choice out of fear is a choice that leads us farther and farther down a line of contraction. And so if, for example, I am afraid of being alone, if that's a fear I have, I'm afraid of being alone, and I then end up in relationships with people who aren't right, in relationships that pull me off my path. Yes, the relationships are a problem, but the core problem isn't the relationship. The core problem is that I'm making choices in my life based on a fear. Fear of being alone leads me to make all sorts of choices that end up being wrong. And so you've got to go back to the core fear. And this is where it's so important in our lives. And I'm always such a big advocate for introspection and insight to really know, why am I doing things? Because in the vast majority of cases in our lives, the vast majority of the decisions we make, the university I'm going to go to, the job I'm going to have, the person I'm going to marry, the city I'm going to live in most cases, you could pretty much create a really good situation in any of the options. And in most cases, you could create a really bad situation in any of the options. So young people are frequently struggling with, I've got 3-4 universities to choose from. I don't know. This one has got this one has got that. We end up again in our lives, relationship-wise, do I love him more or her more? Who's right? We have it career-wise. Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And in all of those cases, there really isn't a right or a wrong. But we drive ourselves absolutely batty trying to make those sorts of decisions. Whereas what's much more important than where I go to university or what job I have or who I marry is, what is it that is actually propelling my decisions? What is guiding me toward making those decisions? Is it fear? Is it impulse? Is it programming? Because some of it's cultural. My mom, for example, after she graduated from her master's degree program, wanted to go to the Peace Corps. She really wanted to go to the Peace Corps. But her dad, this was 1950s New York, her dad convinced her that if she took 2 years off and went to the Peace Corps, all the good men would be gone. And that she would have no chance of getting married if she took those 2 years off and went to the Peace Corps, because every good eligible man would have already been scooped up and she'd end up unmarried. So she stayed back. But there's all these reasons that we make the decisions we do. And it's not, again, about whether the decision itself is right or wrong, because there's no objective determinant of that. It's all about how we either expand and blossom, grow and wake up, or contract and stay asleep in those decisions. But it's very important for us to know how we're making the decisions. That's what makes it right or wrong. So making a decision out of fear is not the right way to make a decision. Even if, at the end of the day, it turns out it was a good choice. But you don't want to be guided by fear. You don't want to be guided by somebody else's story, somebody else's fear, somebody else's drama, some cultural, societal norm that says if you're not married now, it's over for you. You're going to be a 26-year-old old maid. You want to make decisions in freedom. And that's the core point, is with this questioner when she says, I don't know if I love him. Well, what's important to look at is, am I afraid of loving him? She begins the question by saying, I just suffered a bad breakup. So, is there really love here in the moment, but my fear of getting hurt is keeping me from loving? In that case, I'd say go for it. Let go of the fear. If there's love, listen to the love, don't listen to the fear. Jump in. But it could go another way. I don't love him, But I'm afraid that if I don't marry him, maybe I won't find another man. Maybe I'll end up alone. Maybe there won't be anyone for me. Maybe this will be my last chance. And in that case, again, you listen to the love, or in that case, lack of love, and you don't do it. So there isn't one right answer for this question, because I can't get in her head to know, or her heart to know, which is guiding it. Is it love for him, but a little bit a shadow of fear? In that case, be guided by love. Always be guided by love. And if there isn't love, still don't let fear drive you. Wait for the love. And this is true, by the way. I know she's asked a very specific romantic love, marriage question. But regardless of what decisions we're making in our life, love is a fantastic way to decide. Not the waves of desire, not passion or lust, not drama, but real love. Love for a specific person, love for humanity, love for God, love for Mother Nature, or just love in general. It's a beautiful way to allow yourselves to make decisions. And so if you're ever in a place where you feel like, I don't know what to do, see which way in you love pulls. And again, it may not be romantic love. It may not be, there's a person I love in one of these two cases. But the heart that we have is so magnificent that it's able to love and to experience love, not just for people we're romantically involved with, but it's able to experience love in so many different cases, in so many different situations, for so many different people, things, places, experiences, future generations, manifestations of the divine. So always ask yourself, which direction does love pull me in? Or which direction is fear trying to pull or push me in? Because it's always also a pretty good way to go the opposite. Not in a reckless way, but just to make a commitment that I'm not going to allow my life to be guided by fear. Because then you end up fearful. Sadly and ironically, when we make choices to alleviate fear, it actually just breeds more fear. So we think, I'll do this because I'm afraid of that. But then after doing it, some other fear arises. And then we just keep making decisions out of fear. And our life becomes just outrunning our fears, which you can't actually do because they're sitting right inside your skull. And so no matter how fast you run or which direction you run in, the minute you stop, you realize, oh my God, it's still inside my head. And so make that commitment. It's a beautiful time. I always love any holiday, any occasion, any opportunity to have an auspicious time to make a change. And making a commitment to move through our lives with love instead of fear is a beautiful commitment. And it may, by the way, it may be love for yourself. It's not always love for something outside, but love for your capital S self, love for your highest, truest self, that's got a much better opportunity in life than to be enslaved by your ego, or to be enslaved by your patterns, or to be enslaved by the fears of other people who may have given birth to you or raised you or been a part of your education or a culturalization when you were young. That love of the self is what grants it freedom. So as we're thinking about New Year's resolutions, it's a good one to make. Because love is the nature of the true self. And so when we talk about experiencing that true self, when you're in tune with love, you're in tune with your true self. And again, this is distinct from lust, passion. See, here's what it looks like. Imagine for a moment, I know we're in an ashram in Satsang, but nonetheless, just imagine for a moment that you are in the throes of lust, the throes of lustful passion. Now, notice what happens to your mind and your vision. It goes from being broad to being narrow. Suddenly, it's all about gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it, need it now, need it now, need it. I mean, that's the voice of lustful passion. Yes, 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 now, 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 need it, need it, need this. It's all about from the expansive to the contracted. The vision becomes very, 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 very narrow. Love is the opposite. Love takes the vision from the narrow to the expansive. So if you're ever wondering what it is you're feeling, just check in internally and see whether inside is there an experience of contraction or is there an experience of expansion? Is there an experience of manic hyperness? Gotta be now, gotta be now, gotta be now, gotta be now. Or an experience of universal perfection. Just the perfection of the present moment. Because love is content to wait. Love isn't in a hurry. Love is able to love even when nothing happens. Love just is. Lust, passion needs something to happen. Love just is. And so when we talk about making decisions based on love, it's important to understand that distinction, because otherwise you end up being driven by impulse, driven by instinct, driven by desire, driven by things that we end up later regretting. Whereas love drives us out of expansion and oneness and connection and perfection. So allow that to be what guides your decision. And if there isn't a path in this moment that feels that it's being pulled by love, that's okay. Maybe it's not a time that you need to move anywhere. Maybe it's a time of stillness. Maybe it's a time of quietness. Even nature, fields have fallow times. Times of the earth regenerating itself. Apple trees don't give apples 365 days a year. And same thing with ourselves. You know, we drive ourselves like out of one relationship into the next, out of one job into the next, even if we don't necessarily need it to put bread on the table. It's all about, what am I doing? What am I achieving? What's my identity? Who am I if I'm not in a career, in a relationship? So we drive ourselves in this one after the other, after the other, after the other. But if there isn't a pull of love within, it may just be your own self's way of saying, right now, let that love be love for self. And maybe it's just a time of quietness. And when the heart is open, you'll feel it pulled. You'll feel it pulled very soon, because that's its nature.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. So she's asked, is it possible to be very successful, very wealthy, and also very spiritual and humble? Can those different things go together? And if so, then what to do if someone is either you or someone else, presumably you, because we try to just talk about ourselves in here. It's not a place of how do I get this one to behave. How do you let go of judgment toward people like that? So it's a two-part question. First of all, it's absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. There's a great story of two monks, an older monk and a younger monk, who are walking through the forest. And they come to a river, and on the edge of a river is this beautiful young damsel in distress. And she says, oh, can either of you help me across this river? And the younger monk is like, no. And the older monk picks her up in his arms and carries her across the entire river and sets her down safely on the other side. And much later that day, that took place in the morning, much later that day, finally the younger monk says, okay, I can't take it anymore. I've got to tell you, I'm so upset about what you did this morning. We are celibates. We are renunciants. We've taken vows of not being intimate with women, and you took this beautiful woman, you held her in your arms against your chest, you carried her across this river. How is that possible? And the older monk says, I only carried her in my arms. You've carried her in your mind and your heart. And my arms set her down this morning. But you've carried her in your mind and in your heart all day long. Now, I share that story even though it's not exactly the same situation, because it has the key to it. It's not the object, whether the object is money, whether the object is a house, whether the object is a woman you're carrying across the river. It's not that makes us unspiritual. It's our relationship to it. And so if the monk were carrying her across and having all sorts of, romantic and sensual yearnings, well then, yeah, sure, that's absolutely a violation of his vows. But if he's carrying her across as her father, as her brother, as her son, then it's very pure. In the same way, if my mind is focused on money, that's what I need to be happy. There is something lesser about me because I don't have enough. There is an internal lack in me because I don't have enough. Therefore, I want to have more. That is going to pull me away from spirituality, regardless of whether I even get my head above middle class. So it actually has nothing to do with how much I make and everything to do with what's going on in my mind. A very poor person could actually be deeply unspiritual because their mind is so focused on getting money. Now, if they're so poor that they need it actually to feed their families, that's different. That's doing their dharma. That's their duty. They have to feed their families. But for most people whose minds are constantly obsessed with more and more, they're not people who need the money to put the food on the table. They're not people who are worried that winter's coming and their kids won't have sweaters. They're people for whom there's an emotional, psychological experience of not enough. The culture makes it worse, of course, because the culture, through marketing, through advertising, is always telling us your happiness, your fulfillment, your peace is going to come in what I'm selling you. I mean, this is how advertisements are. If you actually look at any ad, you'll realize they never actually sell what they're selling. Choose any advertisement, a TV commercial, an ad in a newspaper, in a magazine. They're never really about what they're selling. They're always about happiness. So I want to sell you a dishwasher. I'm going to show you a picture of a happy family, and this beautiful wife and her beautiful husband and their beautiful kids are all loading the dishwasher together, and and miraculously the glasses are already clean even though they're putting them into the dishwasher, like somehow they're pre-clean glasses, no grime, no mess. And here they are loading the dishwasher together. I'm not selling you clean dishes. I'm selling you a happy family. If I want to sell you a car, how am I going to sell it? Typically only one of two ways. Either freedom, and that's the one person in the car driving off into the sunset, nothing but open highway in front of them, this beautiful land. So that's the, do you feel stuck in your life? Get a Toyota. Right? Like if only you had this Toyota, you too would not be stuck in your life. You would be driving off into the horizon in a land as far as the eye can see. Or, again, we sell happiness. And so, happy husband and wife in the front seat, happy kids in the back seat. And you think, my God, my kids try to strangle each other in the back seat of the car. Maybe if I buy this car, my kids are going to play nice, like the kids in the commercial. So I mention that because it's not all our fault that we move through the world constantly wanting more. We are being constantly inundated with propaganda and marketing to make us believe all the time, A, that we don't have enough, and B, that what that person is trying to sell is the answer. to our frustration, to our boredom, to our depression, to our misery that we didn't even know we had, but we certainly have after we see the advertisement. But in order to buy all those things, you need a lot of money. So naturally, I need more money. That sense of I don't have enough, I need more, is the fastest derailer on a spiritual path. And whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's love, whether it's opportunity, whatever it may be, that sense of something is lacking in my life. There is one thing standing between me and happiness. That's going to derail me from my spiritual path, because spiritual connection says, my cup runneth over. Purnamata. We are poured and we are full, we are whole, we are complete. The moment is perfect. So any other thought is going to derail me. Now, that's true whether I'm middle class or super wealthy. There are lots of people who are super wealthy who still don't think they have enough. Those are going to be the people not spiritual. But then there's other people who maybe they inherited a bunch of money, maybe they got lucky, maybe they happen to really love a job or an innovation that happened for whatever reason to be fantastically successful. You know, a bunch of really smart young people a couple decades ago with the tech boom. Okay, they loved what they were doing. Young kids, working out of garages, and now they're multi-billionaires. But it's not about the money. It's about the mindset. It's the mindset that makes us unspiritual. So you could be one of those or one of anybody who happens to have lots of money, but who's also deeply, deeply spiritual. And again, you could be much lower along the ranks of financial prosperity and be deeply unspiritual because your mind is always focused on money. It's like that other story of the two friends who one night, one of them says, I'm going to go to a brothel tonight. And the other guy says, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. You are a sinner. You are a horrible man. I'm going to go to the mandir. I'm going to the temple tonight. And one goes off to the brothel and the other goes to the mandir. And the guy in the mandir the whole time is thinking, oh my God, he's in the brothel. I wonder what he's doing now. I can't believe that guy's in the brothel. And he just, his whole mind that whole night is all focused on the friend in the brothel. The guy in the brothel is thinking, oh, I wish I had gone with my friend to the temple. He must be doing such beautiful prayers and puja. I wish I were in the temple with him. They come back together. Tragically, there's a natural disaster. They both die. The guy who goes to the brothel ends up in heaven. The guy who went to the temple ends up in hell. And they say to God, well, how? Not the one who went to the brothel who goes to heaven, of course, he's happy. But the one who went to the temple, he says to God, how is this possible? I was in the temple. The night before I died, I was in the temple. This guy was in the brothel. I should be in heaven. He should be in hell. And God says, it's about where your mind is. Sure, your body was in the temple, but your mind was in the brothel all night. His body was in the brothel, but his mind was in the temple all night. So that's what's most important. And we have a beautiful teaching of that in the scriptures, because Lanka, where Ravan came from, the city he was king over, the demon Ravan, was made of gold. It was a city made of gold. Dwarka, the city that Krishna was king of, also a city made of gold. Two cities of gold, one hell, because it's being run by a demon. The other, heaven, because it's being run by Krishna. So clearly the gold is not the determining factor. Clearly the determining factor between the heaven and the hell, the Dwarka and the Lanka, is who's running the show. So regardless of what we have, the question to ourselves is, who's running my show? Is it the demon who's full of greed and lust, anger, jealousy? Or is it the divine? So if you find that you're having judgment against people who, for any reason, not just in this case, who have money, but any sort of negative judgment about people, it's a beautiful opportunity to look within and to say, what is it in me that this is triggering? Because here's the thing, there's a lot of annoying people in the world. There's a lot of annoying behaviors and habits that people have in the world. We find them every day. Walk down the street for 10 minutes and inevitably you will pass by all sorts of people with all sorts of random annoying habits. This one walks too slowly. This one walks in the middle of the road, doesn't understand how to stay on his side. This one brakes on a yellow light. This one, whatever it may be. All sorts of behaviors that we may find really annoying. One smoking a cigarette and blowing the smoke in your face. Another one's talking too loudly on their phones. But we pass by without being impacted by them. We don't find ourselves finally getting to where we're going for lunch and saying, oh, I cannot eat. That guy was driving too slow. This one stopped at a yellow light. Don't they know it means go? This one was blowing a smoke in my face. This one was chewing gum too loudly. It doesn't even faze us. It's a tiny blip on our awareness for a split second. The only things that actually hang around long enough for us really to pass judgment on them are things that are triggering something in us. And so if you find yourself really judging something in another, this one is just so selfish, I cannot stand it. And it bothers you and it eats at you. It's a beautiful opportunity to say, what am I struggling with inside me? And it could be one of two things. If we take my selfish example, let's say somebody's selfish and I've got lots of judgment about that. Like really the type of judgment that keeps me awake at night and makes me not want to eat my food, makes me not want to be around that person. One possibility is I'm actually very selfish, but I don't want to look at it because it's too hard for my ego to look at it. And so I'm hiding away from my own selfishness by projecting that onto another person and judging them for it. And the flip possibility is I'm one of those people who, in order to feel okay about myself, absolutely ignores myself and only does for others. And there's actually something about the selfishness of that person that I wish I had. That I wish that on some level I too could make choices that were good for me. But that thought is so abhorrent to me because I feel like my only value as a being is that which I'm doing for other people. And to think about myself is selfish. And so I can't even allow myself to have that thought. And so I judge and I hate that person for embodying something that actually has a tiny little bit of something that I wish I could have. You see it also for laziness. Oh, that guy is just so lazy. I can't stand it. Well, again, am I actually really lazy? But I'm not looking at it? Or flip side, Am I one of those gotta keep doing, because only then am I a valuable being on earth? Only then am I entitled to occupy my space and take my breaths. And when I see somebody just sitting back with their feet up, it arouses in me such envy. But I can't call it envy because in my mind, laziness is such a horrible sin. And so I just hate that person. And so I'm always in favor of insight. When something pushes your buttons a lot, use it for insight. What is it? What is it in me? Because people will come and go in your lives, especially the annoying ones. I mean, they're not going to be people, chances are, that you marry or settle down with. And so it's, it's a temporary colleague or a neighbor or, somebody in the community or whatever it may be. They'll come and they'll go. But use that as an opportunity to really learn more about yourself and free yourself from these habits. This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.